The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as Ambassador Zethkar of the Vraxian Empire slammed his four-armed fist against the crystalline podium. His purple scales rippled with barely contained rage as he addressed the assembled representatives of 47 different species. "The humans have gone too far this time," he hissed, his serpentine tongue flicking out to taste the recycled air. "They destroyed an entire Vraxian battle fleet with just 12 ships. 12. Our intelligence reports are calling it impossible." Counselor Yathara, the elderly Zephyrian whose translucent wings shimmered behind her frail form, leaned forward in her hovering chair. "Perhaps your intelligence is flawed, Ambassador. The humans have been members of our galactic community for only 30 cycles. Their technology, while adequate, is nowhere near advanced enough to—" "Tell that to the families of 3,000 dead Vraxian warriors," Zethkar interrupted, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. "Tell that to Admiral Krexthul, whose flagship was carved in half by some kind of energy weapon we've never seen before." The murmur that rippled through the council chamber was one of concern mixed with skepticism. The humans had joined the Galactic Federation 3 decades ago, after their first successful faster-than-light voyage brought them to the attention of Tyrillian scouts. Since then, they had been model citizens, contributing to trade, sharing their limited technologies, and participating in cultural exchanges. They were considered a minor species, interesting for their unusual resilience and adaptability, but hardly a military threat. Senator Morgeth of the Catherian hegemony, his massive bulk barely contained within his reinforced chair, rumbled his disagreement. "The humans are primitives. Their weapons still use projectiles and chemical explosives. Their ships are crude constructions of metal and ceramic. What you describe is impossible." "Then explain this." Zethkar activated his personal holoprojector, and the air above the council floor filled with the tactical recording from the battle. The assembled representatives watched in stunned silence as 12 sleek human vessels, each no larger than a Vraxian cruiser, systematically dismantled a fleet that should have outgunned them 100 to 1. The human ships moved with impossible precision, their formations shifting and flowing like a school of predatory fish. They didn't just outmaneuver the Vraxian fleet. They seemed to predict every tactical decision before it was made. Energy beams lanced out from the human vessels with surgical accuracy, each shot finding critical system junctions and reactor cores with devastating effect. "This recording must be fabricated," declared Admiral Cathor of the Nexus Coalition, his cybernetic implants glowing red with indignation. "No species developed such advanced tactical capabilities in mere decades. It takes millennia to achieve this level of coordination." But Counselor Yathara was studying the recording with growing alarm. Her ancient eyes, which had witnessed the rise and fall of 3 galactic civilizations, saw something the others missed. "Look at their movement patterns," she whispered, her voice carrying clearly in the sudden hush. "They're not just coordinated. They're operating as a single entity. Each ship knows exactly what the others will do before they do it." The recording continued, showing the final moments of the engagement. The human fleet had eliminated 90% of the Vraxian force without losing a single vessel. As the surviving enemy ships attempted to retreat, the humans simply let them go. No pursuit, no final crushing blow. They had achieved their objective and withdrew with the same impossible precision they had displayed throughout the battle. Ambassador Thelnara of the peaceful Altarian Collective raised her crystalline hand. "Perhaps we should contact the human delegation directly. There may be an explanation for this apparent technological advancement." "The humans claim it was a defensive action," Zethkar spat. "They say our fleet was trespassing in their territory and refused to acknowledge their sovereignty over the Kepler system. The Kepler system has been disputed territory for over 2 centuries, Senator Morgeth pointed out. "Multiple species have claims there." "Not anymore," Zethkar's voice was bitter. "The humans have established a monitoring station on Kepler 7b. Any ship that approaches without permission is warned once, then destroyed. We tested their resolve 3 days ago." The implications of this statement sent a chill through the chamber. The humans, who had been content to occupy a handful of systems on the galactic rim, had suddenly claimed one of the most strategically important locations in their sector. Kepler 7b sat at the intersection of 3 major trade routes and contained rare elements essential for faster-than-light drive construction. Counselor Yathara accessed her personal data files, her fingers dancing across holographic displays. I'm reviewing our intelligence reports on human military capabilities. Something doesn't align with what we're seeing. For several minutes, the only sound in the chamber was the soft humming of translation matrices and the whisper of recycled air through the ventilation systems. Finally, the ancient Zephyrian looked up, her expression troubled. Our intelligence reports indicate that humans maintain a military force of approximately 2 million personnel spread across their colonies. Standard equipment, standard training protocols based on pre-spaceflight combat doctrine. Nothing remarkable. Then how do you explain what happened to my fleet? Zethkar demanded. I can't, Yathara admitted. According to our data, the human military should be incapable of such tactical brilliance. Unless... She paused, her translucent features growing pale. Unless we've been monitoring the wrong military force. The chamber erupted in confused murmurs. Ambassador Thelnara's crystalline form chimed softly as she spoke. What do you mean, the wrong force? Every species in the galaxy maintains their military forces openly. We know the size, composition, and capabilities of every fleet and army in Council space. But what if the humans have been hiding their true military capabilities? What if what we've been observing is just their civilian defense force? The suggestion was met with immediate protests. Senator Morgeth's voice boomed across the chamber. Impossible. The monitoring accords require full disclosure of military assets. The humans signed the treaty like everyone else, did they? Yathara's question hung in the air like a physical presence. Or did they sign an agreement to disclose their military forces, then simply define military in a way we never expected? Ambassador Zethkar felt his blood run cold. You're suggesting they have a hidden army? I'm suggesting, Yathara said carefully, that we may have grossly underestimated what humans consider to be an acceptable response to threats. We need to know more about these 12 ships and who was commanding them. The recording flickered and died, leaving the council chamber in contemplative silence. Somewhere in human space, a force existed that could destroy a battle fleet without breaking stride. The question that terrified them all was simple. How many more ships like those 12 were hiding in the darkness between the stars? Deep within the Sol system, on a moon that officially didn't exist in any galactic registry, General Sarah Chen stood before a wall of tactical displays that showed the positions of every military vessel within 50 light-years. Her weathered hands clasped behind her back as she watched the aftermath of Operation Silent Thunder unfold across the galaxy's communication networks. Ma'am, we're picking up increased chatter from the Galactic Council, reported Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Rivera, his fingers dancing across holographic controls. They're asking a lot of questions about our capabilities. Good, Chen replied without turning from the displays. It's about time they started taking us seriously. How long before they figure out the Kepler engagement wasn't conducted by our regular colonial defense forces? Intelligence estimates 72 hours before they realized the CDF couldn't have pulled off those tactical maneuvers. Maybe less if they start analyzing our formation patterns. General Chen nodded slowly. She had commanded the human elite forces for 15 years. Ever since humanity's first contact with hostile alien species had convinced Earth's leadership that their survival depended on more than just diplomatic smiles and trade agreements. The HEF was humanity's greatest secret and their ultimate insurance policy. Status report on Phoenix Division, she ordered. All 12 ships returned to base without casualties, minimal ammunition expenditure. The Vraxians never got close enough to analyze our weapon signatures. Chen finally turned to face her operations center, where 36 of humanity's finest military minds coordinated the activities of the most advanced fighting force in known space. The chamber was carved from solid rock and shielded against every form of detection technology the galaxy had to offer. Officially, Titan Research Station conducted atmospheric studies and ice mining operations. In reality, it housed the headquarters of an army that could conquer half the galaxy if necessary. Bring up the Phoenix Division debriefing, she commanded. The main display shifted to show Commander Elena Vasquez, still in her combat suit aboard the flagship HMS Prometheus. Her dark eyes held the calm confidence that marked all HEF personnel, the look of someone who had trained for scenarios that regular military forces couldn't imagine. Mission accomplished, General, Vasquez reported. The Vraxian fleet was neutralized with minimal collateral damage. We identified and disabled their command ship first, then systematically eliminated their escort vessels. Standard HF tactical doctrine proved effective against their formation patterns. Casualties on the enemy side? Chen inquired. Approximately 3,000 confirmed. We allowed the surviving ships to retreat as ordered. Our Psychological Warfare Division believes this will have the desired effect on galactic perception of human military capabilities. General Chen nodded approvingly. The human elite forces didn't fight like other species in the galaxy. While alien civilizations still thought in terms of massive fleets and overwhelming firepower, humanity had learned a different lesson from their violent history. A small, perfectly trained force could achieve more than an army of conscripts. "Sir?" interrupted Captain James Park from the intelligence station. "We're receiving a priority communication from Ambassador Williams on Galactic Station 1. She's requesting immediate consultation regarding council inquiries about our military structure." Put her through. Ambassador Rebecca Williams appeared as a hologram in the center of the operations floor. Her diplomatic composure was intact, but Chen could see the tension in her eyes. Williams had been humanity's voice in the Galactic Council for 8 years, carefully maintaining the fiction that humans were just another minor species trying to find their place among the stars. "General, the Council is starting to ask uncomfortable questions. They want detailed information about the ships that engaged the Vraxian fleet. Some of the older species are getting suspicious about our technological capabilities. How much time do we have before they demand a formal investigation? Maybe a week before they invoke inspection protocols. The Zephyrians are particularly concerned. Counselor Yathara has lived through several galactic wars, and she's asking questions that hit too close to the truth." Chen considered their options. The human elite forces had been designed from the beginning to operate in secret. Every ship, every weapon, every tactical doctrine had been developed in hidden facilities using resources that officially went to civilian infrastructure projects. The galaxy thought humanity controlled 12 systems and maintained a modest defense force. They had no idea that human space contained over 200 worlds, including a dozen military production centers that could build warships faster than most species could design them. "What's the Council's current assessment of human military strength?" "They believe we have approximately 50 ships total, mostly converted civilian vessels with basic armaments. Our ground forces are estimated at 2 million personnel with pre-spaceflight equipment. They think our victory over the Vraxians was either a fluke or the result of some new weapon we stumbled upon." "Recommendations?" Williams hesitated. "We could maintain the deception for a while longer, but eventually they'll discover the truth. When they do, the revelation could destabilize the entire galactic order. Every species will want to know how humanity developed such advanced capabilities in just 30 years. General Chen walked to another display showing the current deployment of HEF assets. 300 ships were currently on patrol, with another 800 in various stages of construction. The ground forces numbered in the tens of millions, equipped with technology that made galactic standard equipment look primitive. Every human soldier received training that would qualify them as elite special forces by galactic standards. "The truth is simpler than they think," Chen said quietly. "We didn't develop advanced capabilities. We just never stopped being what we always were." "Sir?" Captain Park looked confused. "Other species evolved past their violent phases millions of years ago. They developed technology, joined the galactic community, and forgot how to fight. But humans? We've been perfecting the art of warfare for our entire existence. We just applied that expertise to a larger scale." On the display, tactical analyses showed how human forces had adapted every lesson learned from thousands of years of conflict on Earth. The formation flying that had impressed the Galactic Council? It was based on fighter pilot techniques developed in the 20th century. The precision targeting that had devastated the Vraxian fleet. Artillery calculations refined through countless battles. The psychological warfare that left enemies demoralized and confused. Strategies as old as human civilization itself. "General," Lieutenant Colonel Rivera announced, "we're receiving reports from our intelligence networks throughout Council space. Several species are quietly mobilizing their fleets. The Catherian hegemony has activated 3 reserve squadrons, and the Nexus Coalition is conducting emergency readiness drills." "They're scared," Chen observed with satisfaction. "Good. Fear keeps people honest." "Should we reveal the truth about our capabilities?" Ambassador Williams asked. General Chen studied the tactical displays for a long moment. The galaxy was vast, containing thousands of species and countless potential threats. Humanity had survived by being underestimated, but that advantage was ending. Soon they would need to make a choice: remain hidden and risk being discovered at the worst possible moment, or reveal their strength and fundamentally change the balance of galactic power. Not yet, she decided. But start preparing for full disclosure. If the Council forces our hand, we'll show them exactly what human military doctrine can accomplish when it's properly applied. And if they decide we're a threat to galactic stability? Chen smiled grimly. Then they'll learn why our species conquered an entire planet before we ever left our home system. The galaxy thinks they've seen human military capability. They have no idea what we're really capable of when we stop holding back. 3 days after the Vraxian defeat, Agent Kira Okafor materialized from her stealth suit inside the Galactic Intelligence Archive on Centauri Prime. The facility, operated jointly by 7 major species, contained the most comprehensive military database in known space. If the galaxy was going to investigate humanity's true capabilities, they would start here. Her mission was simple: determine how much the galactic intelligence community actually knew about human military operations, and if necessary, misdirect their investigation away from the truth. The human elite forces had spent decades perfecting the art of information warfare, understanding that battles were often won or lost before the first shot was fired. The archive's main data core stretched 3 levels underground, protected by energy shields that could deflect starship weapons. Kira moved through the security measures like water flowing around stones, her enhanced reflexes and training allowing her to anticipate and avoid detection systems that would stop any other infiltrator. She paused at an intersection of corridors, consulting her neural implant for the layout of the facility. The files she needed would be in the restricted access section, where intelligence agencies stored their most sensitive assessments of military capabilities. Getting there would require passing through sensor grids that could detect heartbeats from 50 meters away. Kira smiled as she activated her biosuppression systems. While other species had developed impressive technologies, they had never faced an opponent that could slow their metabolism to near-death levels while maintaining full combat effectiveness. Human special operations techniques, refined through centuries of terrestrial conflicts, proved remarkably effective against alien security systems designed for conventional infiltration methods. 20 minutes later, she reached the core data chambers. The walls hummed with processing power as billions of files were analyzed, cross-referenced, and compiled into intelligence reports that shaped galactic policy. Kira connected her infiltration device to a secondary data port and began downloading the files she needed. What she found made her blood run cold. The Zephyrian Intelligence Service had been conducting covert surveillance of human space for over a decade. Their reports documented shipping manifests that didn't match official trade declarations, energy signatures from systems that supposedly contained only civilian installations, and communication patterns that suggested a military command structure far more sophisticated than anything humanity had admitted to possessing. Even worse, the Catherian hegemony had been tracking human population growth and resource consumption. Their analysts had concluded that official human census data was incomplete by a factor of 10. If their calculations were correct, human space contained nearly 2 billion people, not the 200 million reported to the Galactic Council. Kira's infiltration device chimed softly as it completed the download. She was about to disconnect when another file caught her attention. The Nexus Coalition had recently completed a tactical analysis of the Kepler engagement, and their conclusions were disturbingly accurate. According to their report, the human ships had demonstrated capabilities that required technological advancement beyond anything in their official disclosures. The energy weapons used were at least 50 years ahead of human published research. The coordination between vessels suggested real-time quantum communication systems that humanity claimed not to possess. Most damning of all, the tactical doctrine employed bore striking similarities to classified coalition military strategies that had never been shared with human observers. The implications were clear. Either humanity had developed advanced technologies in secret, or they had been spying on coalition military operations for years. Both possibilities painted humans as a potential threat to galactic security. Kira disconnected her device and began retracing her path through the facility. She had what she came for, but the intelligence painted a grim picture. The galaxy's major powers weren't just curious about human capabilities. They were actively investigating humanity as a potential security threat. As she moved through the corridors, her enhanced hearing picked up voices from a nearby conference room. She recognized the vocal patterns as Zephyrian and carefully approached to listen. "The human population data doesn't add up," one voice was saying. "Their reported birth rates would require 70% of their adult population to be actively reproducing, which is biologically impossible for their species. More concerning is their resource consumption," replied another voice. "The amount of rare metals they're importing suggests industrial production on a massive scale. What are they building that requires such quantities of military-grade materials? Perhaps we should recommend direct investigation," suggested a third voice. "The Council has the authority to inspect member species' military facilities if there's reasonable suspicion of treaty violations." Kira felt her heart rate spike despite her biosuppression training. If the Galactic Council ordered inspections of human facilities, they would discover the truth within days. The human elite forces maintained over 200 installations throughout human space, each one containing evidence that would expose 30 years of carefully maintained deception. She activated her emergency communication system, broadcasting a quantum-encrypted message directly to HEF headquarters on Titan. General Chen needed to know that their secret was on the verge of being exposed. The response came back within seconds. "Continue mission. Gather additional intelligence on inspection protocols." Kira made her way to another section of the archive, where legal and procedural documents were stored. If the Council was considering formal inspections, she needed to understand the process and find ways to delay or misdirect such efforts. The inspection protocols were thorough and damning. Any Council member could request an investigation if they provided evidence of potential treaty violations. The investigating team would have unlimited access to all facilities, personnel, and records. Member species were required to provide full cooperation or face expulsion from the galactic community. But as Kira studied the procedures more carefully, she noticed something interesting. The protocols assumed that the species being investigated would resist or attempt to hide evidence. They were designed to overcome deception, not to handle a situation where the evidence was so overwhelming that it would fundamentally change galactic power dynamics. She accessed historical records of previous inspections. In every case, the investigating species had found either minor violations or evidence that the accused species was weaker than claimed. Never had an inspection revealed that a member species was vastly more powerful than their official declaration suggested. Kira realized that the galaxy's intelligence agencies were operating under a fundamental assumption that might work in humanity's favor. They expected to find evidence of hidden weapons or secret bases. They weren't prepared to discover that humanity had essentially created a parallel civilization, complete with hundreds of worlds, billions of citizens, and a military force that could challenge the combined fleets of half the galaxy. Her analysis was interrupted by alarms echoing through the facility. Security had finally detected her presence, though they were still searching for her in the wrong section. Kira activated her escape protocols, her stealth suit bending light around her as she moved toward the emergency extraction point. As she reached the facility's outer perimeter, she transmitted her final intelligence summary to HEF headquarters. The galaxy suspected that humanity was hiding something, but they had no idea of the true scope of human capabilities. Their investigation would proceed based on the assumption that humans might have a few secret weapons or hidden bases. They weren't prepared to learn that the species they had dismissed as harmless newcomers had built the most advanced military force in galactic history, guided by strategic doctrines developed through thousands of years of constant warfare on a world where only the strongest survived. Kira smiled as her extraction ship materialized around her. The galaxy thought it was investigating a potential threat. What they were actually about to discover was that humanity had never stopped being exactly what they were, the most dangerous predators ever to reach for the stars. The question wasn't whether humans were a threat to galactic stability. The question was whether the galaxy was ready to learn what happened when Earth's children decided to stop pretending to be civilized. Admiral Cathor of the Nexus Coalition had lived through 2 galactic wars and thought he understood the nature of interstellar conflict. His cybernetic implants contained the tactical knowledge of a dozen species, and his fleet had never faced a foe it couldn't defeat through superior firepower and coordinated assault tactics. That confidence evaporated the moment his long-range sensors detected what was approaching the Deneb system. "Admiral, you need to see this," called Commander Yextal from the sensor station, his tentacles writhing with agitation. "We're detecting a human fleet, but the readings don't match anything in our databases." Kithor's mechanical eye whirred as it focused on the tactical display. What he saw defied everything he thought he knew about human capabilities. 47 ships moved in perfect formation toward the disputed system. But these weren't the converted civilian vessels that comprised humanity's known fleet. These were purpose-built warships, sleek and deadly, their energy signatures indicating power cores that should have been impossible for human technology to produce. "Tactical analysis," he ordered, his voice steady despite the growing concern in his circuits. "Sir, these vessels are roughly 30% larger than our heavy cruisers, but they're moving with the agility of fighters. Their formation patterns suggest they're sharing targeting data in real time, which would require quantum communication arrays we didn't know humans possessed." Cathor's fleet consisted of 80 ships, including some of the most advanced vessels in Coalition space. By any reasonable calculation, they should have held a significant advantage over the approaching human force. But something about the way those 47 ships moved made his tactical subroutines generate alarming probability assessments. "Open a communication channel," he commanded. The main display flickered to life, revealing a human in an unfamiliar military uniform. The man appeared to be in his 40s with graying hair and eyes that held the calm confidence of someone accustomed to command. When he spoke, his voice carried an authority that made Cathor's combat algorithms take notice. "I am Admiral James Harrison of the Human Elite Forces. You are ordered to withdraw from the Deneb system immediately." "Human Elite Forces?" Cathor's confusion was evident in his electronic voice. "Our intelligence reports indicate no such organization exists." Harrison's smile was cold and professional. "Your intelligence reports are incomplete. This system is now under human protection. Any attempt to establish a military presence here will be met with appropriate force." Cathor processed this information through his tactical matrices. The Deneb system contained 3 habitable worlds and the largest deposits of quantum crystals in this sector. Multiple species had claims to the system, but none had been willing to risk a major conflict to secure it. The Coalition had been planning to establish a permanent base on Deneb 4 to strengthen their position in future negotiations. "The Coalition has legitimate territorial claims here," Cathor responded. "We will not be intimidated by threats from a species that joined the galactic community yesterday." "Yesterday?" Harrison seemed genuinely amused. "Admiral, I think you'll find that humanity has been part of the galactic community longer than your intelligence services realize. And we've been preparing for situations like this for quite some time." The human fleet continued its approach, maintaining formation with mechanical precision. Cathor's sensors detected no weapons charging, no shields activating, no signs of preparation for combat. Yet every instinct developed through decades of warfare screamed that he was looking at the most dangerous force he had ever encountered. "Sir," whispered Commander Yextal, "our deep scans are detecting unusual energy patterns. These ships appear to be equipped with technologies we can't identify." Kithor made a command decision. "All ships activate defensive screens and charge primary weapons. Maintain defensive formation." On the display, Admiral Harrison shook his head sadly. "I was hoping this could be resolved without demonstration." "Computer, initiate Operation Learning Curve." What happened next would be analyzed by Coalition military strategists for years to come. The human fleet suddenly accelerated beyond anything Cathor's sensors had recorded from their previous encounters. Within seconds, the 47 ships had formed a 3-dimensional web around his entire fleet, positioning themselves with mathematical precision that his tactical computers couldn't predict or counter. "Impossible," Cathor breathed. "No fleet can achieve those acceleration rates without killing their crews." "Beginning demonstration," Harrison announced calmly. The first human ship fired a single beam at the Coalition flagship's forward shields. The energy bolt struck with surgical precision, overloading the shield generators without damaging the hull. Before Cathor could respond, every ship in his fleet simultaneously lost their defensive screens as 46 other beams found their targets with identical accuracy. "Shield failure across the fleet," reported Commander Yextal, his voice rising in panic. How did they target every generator simultaneously? The human fleet's formation shifted again, creating firing lanes that would allow them to destroy Cathor's entire force without any risk of crossfire. The Admiral's cybernetic brain calculated engagement probabilities and returned results that made his organic components feel cold dread. Return fire, he ordered. All ships concentrate fire on their flagship. 80 coalition vessels turned their weapons toward Admiral Harrison's ship. Energy beams and kinetic projectiles filled space as they unleashed enough firepower to vaporize a small moon. The human vessel simply wasn't there when the attacks arrived. Cathor watched in amazement as the human flagship performed maneuvers that should have crushed its crew under impossible gravitational forces. It danced between incoming fire with ballet-like grace, never seeming to hurry yet never quite being where the coalition weapons expected it to be. Their inertial compensation technology is at least a century ahead of ours, Commander Yextel reported with growing alarm, and their reaction time suggests they're predicting our targeting solutions before we complete them. The demonstration continued for exactly 3 minutes. In that time, the human fleet systematically disabled every weapon system, engine array, and communication array in Cathor's formation. They did it without destroying a single ship or killing a single crew member, displaying a level of precision that indicated complete mastery of space combat. When the coalition fleet hung helpless in space, Admiral Harrison reappeared on the communication screen. Your crews are safe, Admiral Cathor. Your ships can be repaired. Consider this a lesson in the consequences of underestimating humanity's commitment to protecting our interests. How? Cathor asked, his pride forgotten in the face of such overwhelming tactical superiority. Our intelligence indicated that your species had barely achieved interstellar travel. How do you possess such advanced capabilities? Harrison leaned back in his command chair, and for a moment his professional demeanor slipped to reveal something older and more dangerous underneath. Admiral, your species achieved peace millions of years ago. You developed technology, joined the galactic community, and forgot how to fight. But humanity spent our entire evolutionary history perfecting warfare. We learned to cooperate not through philosophy, but through the understanding that survival required the strongest possible military organization. The implications hit Cathor like a physical blow. You're saying that humans never stopped being a warrior species? We never stopped being what we were, Harrison confirmed. We just learned to apply those instincts on a galactic scale. Every human child learns tactical thinking as naturally as breathing. Every human colony is positioned to support military operations. Every piece of technology we develop is evaluated for its combat applications. Cathor's tactical computers finally completed their analysis of the engagement. The results were clear. The human elite forces had defeated his fleet using only a fraction of their apparent capabilities. Their ships had operated well within their performance parameters. Their weapons had been set to minimum power, and their formations had been designed for demonstration rather than destruction. What do you want? Cathor asked. Recognition, Harrison replied simply. The galaxy has spent 30 years treating humanity as a minor species to be managed and controlled. That period is now ending. We are claiming our rightful place as a major galactic power, and we expect to be treated accordingly. The transmission ended, leaving Cathor alone with his disabled fleet, and the realization that everything the Coalition knew about galactic power dynamics had just become obsolete. The humans weren't newcomers to the galactic community. They were the newest apex predators, and they had spent decades preparing for the moment when they would reveal their true nature. As his engineering teams worked to restore basic systems, Cathor composed a priority message to Coalition High Command. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity had never been the harmless species they appeared to be. They were something far more dangerous, a civilization that had turned warfare into an art form and was now ready to paint their masterpiece across the stars. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in absolute chaos. Representatives from 47 species filled the great chamber, their voices creating a cacophony of fear, anger, and confusion that the translation matrices could barely process. In the center of it all, Ambassador Rebecca Williams sat calmly at the human delegation table, her serene expression masking years of careful preparation for this moment. Counselor Yathara called for order, her ancient voice cutting through the noise like a blade. The Council will recognize Ambassador Zethkar of the Vraxian Empire. The purple-scaled ambassador rose, his forearms gesticulating wildly as he spoke. Honored counselors, we stand at the precipice of galactic catastrophe. 3 days ago, Admiral Cathor's fleet was defeated by human forces using technologies that violate every known law of physics. The humans have been deceiving us for decades. Senator Morgoth's massive bulk shifted in his reinforced chair. The coalition report is classified, but I can confirm that human military capabilities far exceed their official declarations. We demand immediate explanation. All eyes turned to Ambassador Williams, who rose gracefully from her seat. She had rehearsed this moment countless times, knowing that humanity's future in galactic civilization would be determined by the next few minutes. Honored counselors, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. Humanity has always been honest about our nature. We simply haven't corrected your assumptions about what that nature implies. The chamber erupted in angry protests, but Williams continued without raising her voice. When we first made contact with galactic civilization, we were asked about our military capabilities. We provided accurate information about our colonial defense forces. We never claimed those forces represented the entirety of human military organization. Counselor Ythara leaned forward in her hovering chair. Are you telling us that you deliberately misled the Council about your true capabilities? I'm telling you that we answered the questions you asked, Williams replied calmly. If the Council assumed that our modest defense forces represented our maximum military potential, that assumption was your responsibility, not ours. Ambassador Thelnara of the Altarian Collective chimed softly as she spoke. The inspection reports from your systems show populations and industrial capacity far beyond your official declarations. How do you explain these discrepancies? William smiled, and for the first time the assembled representatives caught a glimpse of something dangerous behind her diplomatic mask. The same way we explain our military capabilities. You asked about inhabited systems and we told you about our major colonies. You never asked about frontier settlements, research stations, or industrial complexes. How many worlds do you actually control? Demanded Senator Morgoth. Currently, we maintain permanent installations on 437 celestial bodies, including 214 worlds capable of supporting human life without artificial atmospheric processing. The number hit the chamber like a physical blow. The assembled representatives had believed that humanity controlled perhaps 20 systems at most. The revelation that human space was actually larger than most established empires sent shocked murmurs rippling through the Council. Admiral Cathor's voice came through the communication system from his medical facility. What about your military forces? How many ships are we actually facing? Williams consulted her datapad with theatrical precision. The human elite forces currently maintain 1,400 active warships, with approximately 600 more in various stages of construction. Our ground forces number roughly 40 million personnel, though that figure excludes planetary militias and reserve formations. The silence that followed was deafening. Every major species in the galaxy had spent decades carefully monitoring each other's military buildups. The idea that humanity had constructed a fleet larger than anything in galactic space without anyone noticing seemed impossible. Counselor Ythara's voice was barely a whisper. How did you hide such massive military construction? We didn't hide it, Williams replied. We simply built our facilities and systems you never bothered to explore. The galaxy is vast, counselors. There are billions of star systems between the established trade routes. While other species competed for control of known worlds, humanity quietly claimed the unknown ones. Ambassador Zethkar slammed his fist against his podium. This is exactly what we feared. The humans have been planning galactic conquest for decades. Have we? Williams asked mildly. If humanity intended conquest, why would we reveal our capabilities now? We could have continued operating in secret, building our forces until we were ready to strike. Instead, we're engaging in open diplomacy. Then what do you want? Senator Morgoth demanded. Williams stood straighter, and when she spoke, her voice carried the authority of 40 billion human beings. Respect. For 30 years, humanity has been treated as a junior species to be managed and guided by our supposed betters. Our trade agreements have been deliberately disadvantageous. Our territorial claims have been dismissed. Our voice in council matters has been ignored because you assumed we were too weak to matter. She gestured to the tactical displays that showed the recent engagements. Recent events have demonstrated that those assumptions were incorrect. Humanity possesses the military capability to enforce our interests throughout this galaxy. The question before this council is whether we will be recognized as equals, or whether we need to demonstrate our capabilities more comprehensively. The threat was subtle, but unmistakable. The assembled representatives began to understand that they were facing a species that had spent decades preparing for this exact moment. Every trade agreement, every diplomatic interaction, every seemingly innocent cultural exchange had been part of a long-term strategy to position humanity for galactic dominance. Counselor Yathara's ancient mind processed the implications with growing alarm. You're telling us that everything humanity has done for the past 30 years has been preparation for this moment? Not preparation for conquest, Williams corrected. Preparation for recognition. Humanity learned long ago that peace is only possible when all parties acknowledge each other's strength. We have simply been ensuring that when this conversation finally occurred, we would be negotiating from a position of equality. And if the Council refuses to acknowledge your new status? Asked Admiral Cathor. Williams smiled, and this time there was nothing diplomatic about the expression. Then we will continue to demonstrate our capabilities until acknowledgement becomes inevitable. The galaxy can accept humanity as a partner, or it can learn to accept us as the dominant military power. The choice is yours. The chamber fell silent as the representatives contemplated their options. They had gathered expecting to condemn a minor species for treaty violations. Instead, they found themselves facing a civilization that had outmaneuvered every intelligence, service in galactic space, and built a military force capable of challenging the established order. Senator Morgath was the first to speak. What are your terms for partnership? Simple, Williams replied. Humanity will be granted equal representation in all council decisions. Our territorial claims will be recognized and respected. Trade agreements will be renegotiated on terms that reflect our actual economic and military strength. And any future military actions against human interests will be met with overwhelming force. You're demanding that we restructure the entire galactic order, Counselor Yathara observed. We're demanding that the galactic order reflect reality instead of comfortable fiction, Williams corrected. Humanity has always been exactly what we are. You simply chose to see us as something smaller and less dangerous. That period of willful blindness is now ending. The representatives looked at each other with growing understanding. They had been outplayed by a species they had dismissed as harmless newcomers. Worse, they were beginning to realize that everything they knew about human behavior needed to be reevaluated. The cooperation, the cultural exchanges, the apparent eagerness to learn from older civilizations. All of it might have been part of a strategy to gather intelligence and identify weaknesses. Ambassador Thelnara chimed softly. How do we know you won't use your military superiority to dominate the galaxy? Williams paused, considering her answer carefully. Because domination is inefficient. Humanity learned through bitter experience that the strongest civilizations are those that encourage diversity and cooperation. We don't want to rule the galaxy, counselors. We want to protect it. But protection requires strength, and strength requires recognition. The message was clear. Humanity had revealed their true nature not as conquerors, but as the galaxy's self-appointed guardians. They possessed the military power to enforce galactic peace, and they were prepared to use it whether the Council approved or not. The vote, when it came, was unanimous. The galaxy had learned that underestimating humanity was a mistake they could not afford to repeat. 6 months after the Council's recognition of humanity as a major galactic power, the true scope of human military doctrine was put to its ultimate test. The Devourer fleet, a nightmare from the galaxy's distant past, had returned from the void between galaxies, bringing with them technologies and tactics that had once brought entire civilizations to their knees. General Sarah Chen stood in the command center of Titan Base, watching as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The Devourers had emerged simultaneously in 40 different systems, their biomechanical ships consuming everything in their path. Worlds that had existed for millions of years were being stripped of all organic matter within hours. Status report, she ordered. The Outer Rim is in full retreat, reported Colonel Rivera. The Zephyrian defense fleet was completely destroyed at Vega Prime. The Catherian hegemony has lost contact with their entire border region. Conservative estimates suggest we're looking at the total annihilation of galactic civilization within 6 months. Chen nodded grimly. The Devourers were everything the galaxy's legends claimed they were. An unstoppable force that consumed organic matter to fuel their bioships and grow their numbers exponentially. Traditional military tactics were useless against an enemy that could convert destroyed vessels into additional attackers within hours. How are the other species responding? Panic, mostly. The Galactic Council has requested immediate military assistance from the human elite forces. They're offering full technological exchange, territorial concessions, anything we want in exchange for our help. And our response? Admiral Harrison is coordinating Operation Final Lesson. All HEF assets are being repositioned for maximum effectiveness against biomechanical targets. Chen brought up the tactical display, showing human fleet movements across the galaxy. What she saw would have been impossible just a year ago, when the galaxy believed humanity controlled 50 ships. 1,400 HEF vessels were moving into position, supported by converted civilian vessels and hastily activated reserve units that brought the total human fleet to over 3,000 ships. But numbers alone wouldn't defeat the Devourers. These creatures had survived in the void between galaxies for millions of years, perfecting their ability to consume and adapt. They had returned with technologies that made even advanced galactic civilizations look primitive. "Ma'am," interrupted Captain Park from the intelligence station, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Admiral Harrison aboard the HMS Prometheus." The main display shifted to show the veteran commander, his face grim but determined. Behind him, the Bridge of Humanity's flagship buzzed with activity as his crew prepared for the most important battle in galactic history. "General, we've completed our analysis of Devourer tactics based on the Outer Rim engagements. Their bioships adapt to whatever weapons are used against them, becoming immune to repeated attacks of the same type. Conventional galactic doctrine is completely ineffective. What's your assessment of our chances using standard HEF tactics?" Harrison paused before answering. "Honestly, if we fight them the way other species fight, we'll lose. The Devourers have faced conventional military tactics for millions of years. They know how to counter organized fleets, coordinated attacks, and strategic formations." But Chen could hear the confidence underlying Harrison's concerns. But they've never faced humanity's approach to warfare. Every other species in the galaxy developed past their violent phase millions of years ago. They fight with honor codes, established doctrines, and predictable strategies. The Devourers have adapted to counter-civilized warfare. Chen smiled grimly. "And we've never been civilized." "Exactly. The Devourers expect organized resistance from military forces, following established tactical doctrine. They're not prepared for a species that views warfare as a creative art form and considers unconventional tactics to be standard operating procedure." The transmission was interrupted by alerts from across the galaxy. The Devourer fleet had reached the inner systems and was beginning to threaten core worlds. Billions of lives hung in the balance, and conventional military wisdom suggested that resistance was futile. "Initiate Operation Final Lesson," Chen commanded. What followed over the next 72 hours would become the stuff of legend throughout galactic space. The human elite forces didn't fight the Devourers. They terrorized them. Instead of engaging in direct combat, human ships appeared and disappeared like ghosts, striking at critical bioship components and vanishing before the enemy could adapt. Human commanders implemented tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare. They used psychological warfare against creatures that weren't supposed to have psychology. They employed deception against enemies that should have been able to see through any ruse. They turned the Devourers' own adaptation abilities against them by forcing them to adapt to contradictory stimuli simultaneously. Colonel Rivera provided real-time updates as the battle unfolded. Phoenix Division has successfully convinced a Devourer biofleet that their own ships are enemies. They're attacking each other in the Rigel system. How did they manage that? They used holographic projectors to make human ships appear to be bioships, then attacked the real Devourers. When the bioships adapted their recognition systems, the projectors shifted to make the real bioships appear to be human vessels. The adaptation loop created confusion that turned into friendly fire. Chen watched as another human innovation proved its worth. Status on the Neural Warfare Division? They've successfully infected 3 Devourer collective minds with what they're calling Logic viruses. The bioships are receiving contradictory commands from their own command structure. Entire fleets are paralyzed trying to resolve impossible tactical situations. The genius of human tactics became clear as the battle progressed. While other species had tried to outfight the Devourers, humanity was outthinking them. Every advantage the bioships possessed was turned into a weakness through careful manipulation and creative application of human military doctrine. "General," announced Captain Park, "we're receiving surrender requests from Devourer fleet commanders in 18 different systems." Chen blinked in surprise. Surrender requests? The Devourers have never surrendered to anyone. According to their transmissions, they're requesting an end to hostilities in exchange for withdrawal from galactic space. They claim that continued conflict with humanity would result in the extinction of their species. The implications were staggering. The Devourers, who had terrorized the galaxy for eons, were asking for mercy from the species that everyone had considered harmless newcomers just months ago. The psychological impact on galactic civilization would be profound. What are Admiral Harrison's recommendations? He suggests we accept their surrender but demand full technological exchange and permanent non-aggression treaties. He also recommends that we maintain patrol fleets in the void to ensure they don't return. Chen considered the offer. Humanity had achieved something that millions of years of galactic civilization had deemed impossible. They had defeated the Devourers not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through superior tactical thinking and creative application of military principles. Approve the surrender terms, she decided, but make it clear that this is conditional on their permanent withdrawal from local galactic space. If they return, we'll demonstrate techniques that make the last 72 hours look like a training exercise. As the reports of victory spread throughout the galaxy, Chen reflected on what had been accomplished. Humanity had revealed the final truth about their nature. They weren't just warriors who had learned to use advanced technology. They were the heirs to 10,000 years of military innovation applied by a species that had never stopped fighting. The galaxy had learned to fear human military capability, but they had yet to understand the deeper truth. Humanity didn't just possess superior weapons or better ships. They possessed something far more dangerous, a strategic mindset that could turn any situation into a battlefield and any resource into a weapon. The Devourers had retreated not because they were outgunned, but because they had encountered a type of intelligence they couldn't comprehend or counter. For the first time in their existence, they had faced an enemy that was genuinely alien to them, a species that made warfare into an art form and treated every battle as an opportunity for creative expression. The galaxy was safe, protected by the descendants of a world where only the most cunning predators survived to pass on their knowledge to the next generation. 1 year after the defeat of the Devourer fleet, Ambassador Rebecca Williams stood before the Galactic Council in a chamber that had been fundamentally transformed by humanity's rise to power. The ancient hierarchy that had governed galactic civilization for millions of years had given way to a new order, one where human representatives held positions of authority that reflected their species' true capabilities. The ceremonial aspects of the council had been streamlined according to human recommendations. Where once elaborate protocols had consumed days with ritualistic procedures, efficient decision-making processes now allowed genuine progress on galactic issues. The change symbolized more than administrative reform. It represented the end of an era dominated by species who had forgotten how to adapt in the beginning, of an age guided by those who had never stopped evolving. The chair recognizes General Sarah Chen of the human elite forces, announced Counselor Yathara, whose role had evolved from senior leader to coordinator of the new Galactic Defense Initiative. Chen rose from her seat, her uniform bearing insignia that represented not just human authority, but her position as Supreme Commander of Galactic Defense Forces. The title had been created specifically for humanity's leadership role in protecting galactic civilization from external threats. Honored counselors, Chen began, I'm here to present the annual report on galactic security and the integration of human defensive doctrine throughout Allied space. The transformation had been remarkable. Within months of the Devourer defeat, every major species had requested human military advisors to overhaul their defensive strategies. The ancient approach of maintaining large, static fleets had been replaced by human-designed rapid response networks that could address threats before they became existential crises. Current threat assessment indicates that galactic space remains secure from external invasion, Chen continued. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected no signs of hostile activity from any known source. The Devourers remain in exile beyond the galactic rim, and long-range sensors suggest they have no intention of returning to local space. Senator Morgoth shifted his massive bulk, his voice carrying genuine respect that would have been unthinkable a year ago. General Chen, how do you assess the success of the integrated defense network? Exceptional, Chen replied without hesitation. Every member species has contributed to our collective security according to their capabilities. The Zephyrians provide early warning through their sensor networks. The Catherians contribute industrial capacity for ship construction. The Nexus Coalition supplies advanced communications technology. The integration has created a defensive capability greater than the sum of its parts. The success had surprised even human strategic planners. Rather than resenting their reduced independence, most species had embraced the security that came with being part of a truly effective defensive alliance. The constant fear of external threats that had dominated galactic politics for millennia had been replaced by confidence in humanity's ability to protect them. Ambassador Zethkar, whose Vraxian empire had been among the first to experience human military capabilities, stood to address the chamber. General Chen, there are still some who question humanity's long-term intentions. How do we answer those who suggest that your species is merely establishing the foundation for eventual domination? Chen smiled, and the expression held both understanding and patience. Ambassador, I could provide assurances and make promises, but words are meaningless in this context. Instead, I'll point to our actions over the past year. She gestured to the tactical displays that showed human fleet deployments throughout galactic space. Human forces now maintain the capability to impose our will on any species in this chamber. We could demand tribute, dictate trade terms, or establish direct rule over any world we choose. Instead, we've used our strength to eliminate external threats and create conditions where every species can prosper according to their own nature. The truth of her statement was undeniable. Human military advisors had indeed revolutionized galactic defense capabilities, but they had also carefully maintained the political independence of every member species. Trade had flourished under human protection, but economic relationships remained voluntary. Cultural exchange had accelerated, but no species had been forced to adopt human values or customs. Counselor Yithara leaned forward in her hovering chair. What does humanity envision for the future of galactic civilization? Growth, Chen answered immediately. For too long, this galaxy has been limited by the assumption that resources and territory are finite. Defensive thinking dominated because everyone believed that one species' gain required another's loss. Humanity sees unlimited potential. She activated a holographic display showing the galaxy's spiral arms and the vast unexplored regions beyond current borders. There are billions of star systems that remain unexplored. Countless worlds that could support life with proper terraforming. Resources enough to support populations 1,000 times larger than our current numbers. The vision was compelling and ambitious in a way that galactic thinking hadn't been for millions of years. Where other species saw limits and the need for careful resource management, humanity saw opportunities for expansion and growth that could benefit everyone. The galaxy has been thinking defensively for so long that you've forgotten how to think creatively, Chen continued. Human strategic doctrine is based on the HFY understanding that the best defense is the elimination of threats through overwhelming capability and rapid expansion into new territories. Admiral Harrison materialized as a hologram from his flagship, which was conducting deep space reconnaissance beyond the galactic rim. General Chen, we're ready to begin Phase 2 of the expansion initiative. Proceed, Admiral. Harrison's image shifted to show star charts that extended far beyond known space. Human exploration fleets have identified over 300 potentially habitable systems within 50 light-years of our current borders. We're requesting authorization to begin establishment of advanced bases for long-term development. The scale of human ambition became clear to the assembled representatives. While they had been focused on managing existing territories and resources, humanity had been planning expansion that would double the size of known space within a generation. Ambassador Thelnara chimed softly as she spoke. This expansion would require massive resource investments and coordinated efforts from multiple species. which is why we're proposing a collaborative approach, Chen explained. Every species that contributes to the expansion effort will receive territorial grants proportional to their investment. Rather than competing for limited resources, we'll be creating new opportunities for everyone. The proposal represented a fundamental shift in galactic thinking. Instead of the zero-sum competition that had characterized interspecies relations for eons, humanity was offering a positive-sum approach that could benefit all participants. Senator Morgath rumbled his approval. The Catherian hegemony would be interested in contributing our industrial capabilities to such an effort. The Zephyrian Collective offers our scientific expertise for terraforming research, added Counselor Yathara. One by one, the major species committed to participating in humanity's expansion vision. The transformation was complete. The galaxy had moved from defensive thinking to aggressive growth. Guided by the strategic doctrine of the species that had never learned to accept limitations, Chen watched as the vote was recorded. Unanimous approval for the largest expansion effort in galactic history, funded and organized by species working together rather than competing against each other. As the session concluded, she reflected on what humanity had accomplished. They had revealed their true military capabilities not to conquer, but to protect. They had used their strategic superiority not to dominate, but to guide. Most importantly, they had shown a galaxy that had forgotten how to dream that the universe was far larger and more full of opportunities than anyone had dared to imagine. The galaxy had learned the true power of the human elite army. Not just the ability to win battles, but the vision to ensure that there would be no need for battles to be fought. They had transformed a collection of fearful, competing civilizations into a unified force, capable of reaching for the stars themselves. Humanity had kept their greatest secret until the very end. They weren't just the galaxy's most dangerous warriors. They were its most optimistic dreamers, and they had the military capability to make those dreams reality for everyone willing to follow them into the infinite darkness between the stars.